안녕하세요. 저는 Tanya McCartney입니다. I am an author, illustrator, designer of children's books, predominantly picture books. It is my great honour to be talking with you today about animals in Australian picture books. Children love animals. They have an inherent connection with the natural world in all its forms: flora, fauna, geographic, cosmic. Their hearts are wide open, and they have a true understanding of the preciousness of life. For children, combining animals with books is a powerful manifestation. For them, books are as vital as breath is to lung, as giggling is to fun. Books bring comfort to children. They bring companionship, joy, understanding, connection, and so do animals. It's little wonder then that animal books are immensely popular with children. From the moo, quack, meow of thick-paged toddler books to the traditional narrative dozy bedtime story to the encyclopedic tomes of astonishing facts and figures children squirrel away into their boundless minds. Australian animals include some of the most unique creatures on Earth. Our isolated island continent has seen the development of an extraordinary native menagerie. In my book, Fauna, Australia's Most Curious Creatures, I talk of our bountiful fauna world, and that's despite the vast majority of our country being covered in baking deserts and tufted savanna where seemingly little would survive. To give you a mere glimpse of the diversity and uniqueness of our native animals, I will read a passage from Fauna. Australia is one of only 17 megadiverse countries which together contain more than 2/3 of the world's plant and animal biodiversity. It is home to more animal species than any other developed country, and a whopping 87% of our mammals, 45% of our birds, 93% of our reptiles, and 94% of our amphibians are found nowhere else on Earth. Because of the way Australia's animals have evolved on our isolated island continent, they have become some of the most curious and unusual creatures. There's our iconic kangaroo, a cross between a deer, a rabbit and a frog who cannot walk backwards, yet can leap as far as 13 metres. There's the largest reptile on Earth, the saltwater crocodile. It has the strongest bite pressure of any living animal, yet the muscles that open its mouth are so weak its snout can be kept closed with a rubber band. Do not try this at home. We even have the world's most dangerous bird. Although generally placid, the cassowary's 18-centimetre claws are not something to be messed with. There is, of course, our platypus, an otter-duck-beaver hybrid, according to early European settlers anyway. Both the platypus and echidna are the only surviving monotremes, which are the world's oldest living group of mammals and the only mammals to lay eggs. The platypus dates back an astonishing 166 million years. Sadly, Australia's native mammal population has the largest extinction rate on Earth, and much of this, of course, is thanks to climate change. Making children aware of these animals and the issues that put them at risk is more vital than ever, and what better way to do this than through the pages of a book? Well beyond education, I've always said that the way to a child's book heart is through pure fun. This is how we engage the child, through play. We can then provide factual information in an intriguing, interesting and child-centric way. This educates as well as entertains. We can create humorous animal characters, anthropomorphised of course, that children can resonate with and cheer for. Featuring animals in books helps kids care for these beautiful beings. And as children are most definitely our future, honing their knowledge and understanding of animals is absolutely key to their survival. And ours, we are animals after all. One of the challenges in children's books in the English-speaking world is the vast imbalance of characters in ethnicity, gender, culture and class, with Caucasian male middle-class characters dominating across all genres of book. One of the greatest ways to entrance and invite children into books and story is to provide characters that children can relate to and see themselves in, no matter who they are, where they're from. Animals can be a way for bookmakers to create characters that can be seen by children through their own lens. male, female, non-binary, black, white, brown, able, disabled, rich, poor, and much more. Australia's picture book history has been a relatively recent one. It has only been the last 50 years or so that's seen a true explosion in picture books specifically made by Australian creators. Having a culture deeply influenced by Great Britain and North America, many of the books of my own 1960s, 1970s childhood were imported from the UK and the US. Beatrix Potter, A.A. Milne, Rudyard Kipling, Enid Blyton, Dr. Seuss. Our country's very first homegrown picture book creators include late 19th century, early 20th century talents such as May Gibbs, Dorothy Wall and Ruth Park. Each of these creators deeply understood the appeal of animals and nature for children and wrote and illustrated books on these topics. Arguably our most famous creator of children's books is May Gibbs, the author and illustrator of many books for children, her most iconic series being about two gumnut babies called Snugglepot and Cuddle Pie. These books featured a wealth of Australian animals from kookaburras to kangaroos, koalas and lizards. These animals took on roles of mentor, support, friend, helper and even sometimes villain, providing a rich character backdrop for the adventuresome tales of her gumnut babies. May's ink and watercolour illustrations were traditional in form, with coloured paintings reflecting the natural hues of the Australian landscape. Even the character's fashion reflected the sartorial style of the early 20th century. My picture book, Mamie, celebrates the real life of May Gibbs and similarly features animals throughout its pages, along with a pet Scotty dog, an animal breed May kept in real life. Featuring animals is a glorious way to connect younger children with the juvenile biopic that is this book, as they quite naturally hunt for and point out and take much delight in the faunal creatures throughout the pages of the book. Like May, my illustrations were rendered in watercolour and ink, and the style and fashion reflects our current times. May Gibbs' counterpart Dorothy Wall wrote and illustrated one of Australia's most famous children's book characters, Blinky Bill. A mischievous young lad in koala form, he epitomises the Aussie larrikin, or ratbag. Blinky had a cast of supporting animal friends, all similarly anthropomorphised, including Splodge the kangaroo and the imparter of wisdom, Mr. Wombat. Wall was skilled at creating a fine blend of real-life animal behaviour with human-like aspects children could resonate and connect with. She also had Blinky interact with readers on occasion, a technique that draws children right into story. Wall's illustrations featured traditional techniques such as cross-hatching and showed a deep understanding of movement and characterisation. As with most children's books of the time, her work would feature line drawings through much of the narrative, with more detailed or coloured palettes as a frontispiece or as chapter headers. Author Ruth Park was best known for her children's novels and her picture book series The Muddle-Headed Wombat, illustrated by Noella Young. Perhaps Australia's version of Winnie the Pooh, Wombat is a bicycle-riding, somewhat slow-witted but lovable and kind-hearted creature. He is so muddle-headed, his speech is peppered with malapromisms like treely-rooley for really truly and horribubble for horrible. Children are far more likely to relate to and champion a character who has faults and challenges just like they do. Could there be anything more irritating, especially for kids, than perfection? As The Muddle-Headed Wombat was first published in the 1960s, Noella Young's illustrations took a more modern feel, though still retained a relatively traditional style, as was the way with children's books at the time. Wombat and his friends could easily have passed for biological versions of themselves, were it not for their clothes, hats, and strands of pearls. Colour imagery reflects compositions, like vignettes, and colour of a more mid-century modern time. The 1970s heralded the rush of the modern Australian picture book created by local talent. The Rainbow Serpent has stood the test of time as one of the earlier picture books written and illustrated by an Indigenous Australian. Dick Ruffsey, Indigenous name Gubala Falden, tells the story of the dreaming tale of Guriala, the maker of mountains, gorges, rivers and creeks, and swallower of people, who watches the world. his eyes the shooting stars of our night sky. This lusciously illustrated book highlights the importance of animals in Aboriginal culture and the oral storytelling that has been passed down through countless generations by the oldest living culture on earth. Having these stories documented and so richly illustrated is a true gift. Modern-day First Nation people are not only creating picture books in celebration of their culture, so richly entrenched in the land and its animals, they are also creating books in their own languages, as many as 363 of them in mainland Australia and surrounding islands, and long may this continue. Magic is one of the mainstays of children's literature, whether full-on wizardry and mystical worlds, or the tender crossover between reality and make-believe, perfectly ensnared in the phrase magical realism. Other than non-fiction books, animals in picture books often rely on that magical realism, mostly in the sense of anthropomorphism, making animals more human. They may talk, they may dance, they may wear shoes, they may drive cars, or even possess magical powers. One of Australia's most iconic picture books is Possum Magic, written by Mem Fox and illustrated by Julie Vivas. It features a grandmother possum who, in order to protect her against snakes, makes her granddaughter Hush invisible. When it comes time to make her visible again, Grandma can't recall the spell, so the duo travels Australia gobbling Vegemite sandwiches and lamingtons and pavlova until Hush becomes visible again. The added dash of magic in this book is featuring the relationship between grandmother and child, of course. Another timeless Australian picture book classic is Diary of a Wombat, written by wombat whisperer and beloved Australian author Jackie French. Illustrated by Bruce Watley, this series of books features Mothball the Wombat and combines deep derisive humour with a hefty dose of adorable. Wombats are well-loved Australian animals, particularly among children. Illustrations feature a lightly anthropomorphised wombat, and the narrative and imagery focuses on the funny, real-life behaviour of wombats that just happens to be a humorous riff on the way children themselves behave. It's little wonder kids and adults adore these books. Digital illustration capabilities have exponentially changed the way books are illustrated, and more recent animal-based picture books are taking to a more modern path with graphic design style imagery made of simple shapes, plump with texture, style, and knee-weakening uber-modern hues that can be summoned at the click of a button. These books feature exquisite design and typography, and superbly dry humour that delivers a 1-2 punch in that it appeals to both kids and adults. True masters in this type of digital book creation are husband-wife duo Philip and Laura Bunting. Their picture book series on Australian animals include Koalas Eat Gum Leaves, about a koala who develops a bit of a thing for ice cream. Hilarious, of course, for an animal that almost exclusively eats gum leaves and from just a handful of eucalypt species. It's the perfect humorous take. Kookaburras Love to Laugh is about a kookaburra who does not love to laugh and goes out of his way to find less silly friends. But the part where he befriends a lineup of plastic lawn flamingos is absolutely priceless. The repetitive nature of the illustrations in these books not only provides visual beauty, it pleases the typical child's affection for repeat imagery and words and actually intensifies the book's humour. The Buntings' most recent book, Lyrebird, is a lolly pink creation about a bird who has a bit of a problem with the truth. Featuring other animals from past books like koala and kookaburra, it again showcases wry humour and a deep narrative wit that both adults and kids will love. As with all books expressly made for children, it's the books with universal appeal across the generations that not only sell well, but can stand the test of time. If narrative fiction picture books are the box office smash of the kidlit world, then non-fiction picture books are the timeless classic. Children adore and rabidly absorb facts and figures. They inherently know that fact is much stranger, more incredible, and vastly more astonishing than fiction. As an author-illustrator, I have 25 non-fiction books in print or production. Almost half of my total book count and well over half of my titles feature animals. Many of these books have been published by the National Library of Australia. Non-fiction books can be straight-up classic information. They can be quasi-narrative. They can also, of course, be full narrative. But whatever the narrative style, I believe that, like all picture books for children, including fiction, non-fiction simply must place illustrations at its core. The Gum Family Finds Home, researched and written by me and illustrated by Christina Booth, features a family of koalas who live in a flimsy gum tree in the Australian bush. They are after a more rock-solid, stable home, so they pack their gum leaf sandwiches and head off in their combi to seek a new home at Australia's ancient, stunning and widespread geological sites, including Uluru, the 12 Apostles and the Bungle Bungle Range. To encourage a connection to our land, it's vital that children learn about Australia's breathtaking, world-famous geological sites. But a book series on inanimate rocks, their history, their mineral composition, could quickly become a snore fest for young children. Want to take children on a geological journey? Just add a family of koalas wearing t-shirts and taking selfies. Sprinkle in plenty of humour, an adventure narrative and striking illustrations, and watch kids jump on board for the ride. What kid wouldn't want to travel in a combi with a bunch of koalas? Christina Booth's part traditional, part cartoonish, digitally rendered illustrations pan in and out between full scene, vignette and breakout boxes, providing immense visual interest while showcasing the splendour of these stunning sights for all ages to enjoy. In Australia's wild, weird, wonderful weather, I took on the role of illustrator and layout artist designer to Stephanie Owen Reader's beautifully researched text. Again, a book about the weather is not the most effervescent subject matter for primary school children, but a book like this could not be more timely, of course. And as children love the unexpected, the dramatic, the wild, this book seizes all of those elements for maximum impact and engagement. Stephanie's fascinating pockets of text are impactful in themselves, but presenting them visually in a way that not only heightens the impact of her words, but provides a cohesive visual whole on each spread, took considered time and balance. Animals, naturally, are featured through the book, as they play an integral role in weather, particularly for Indigenous Australians and for issues like climate change. But I was keen to ensure an animal was present on every single spread, even if it was loosely tied to the text. This is because children are so deeply drawn to animals. On the Measuring Up spread, which has zero direct referencing to animals, I include a horse and its frizzy mane under hair-raising weather. Australia, of course, has a large population of wild horses called brumbies. Similarly, on the Under a Cloud spread, you'll notice a Frisian cow alongside an entry for clouds that hang underneath larger cloud formations. Called mammatus, from the Latin word for udder, these clouds may look like udders, but they do not rain milk. Nevertheless, we have a cow raining milk because kids love that sort of thing so much. Knowing the level of curiosity around animals, Stephanie also included text for an animal antics spread, featuring a range of Australian animals, of course, and their ability to predict the weather. For example, did you know that when sheep snuggle together, it means a storm is on the way? Or that sharks have such acute hearing, they can detect the changes in air pressure when a cyclone is on the way? They'll quickly swim into deeper water to keep safe. Visual narrative is vital in picture books of all forms and takes on the role of a dual storyline that has enriched and nuanced meaning. Much more so than text, in fact. Just as a picture paints 1,000 words, well-considered illustrations, layout and book design have a profound effect on children and can elicit a visceral response. It is most especially important for those struggling to read or affect meaning from text alone. Illustrations indeed have power. As the ending of a great picture book will always in some way come full circle, I'll now return to FAUNA, Australia's most curious creatures. Australia has one of the highest book buying populations per capita, and we actually produce more children's books than Canada. But overall, we have a relatively small book buying market. Local publishers, then, will operate with caution and are likely to appeal to the highest common numerator. This can mean taking risks is a rarity. The National Library of Australia took a calculated risk with FAUNA. With a history of beautiful, traditionally illustrated and laid out books under its belt, Creating a digitally crafted graphic design style book with matte pages and a black cover with rather abstract imagery was a little left of centre. With gentle persuasion and perhaps a little begging, okay, a lot of begging, my modern conceptual vision was realised. I took a strong visual layout approach with FAUNA because I feel so passionately about enlightening children on our precious endemic animals and their questionable future, and having strong imagery and modern layout is a fine way to do that. I wanted to pull kids in with their eyes first and foremost and give them a series of striking layouts pockmarked with accessible, juicy information bites. But visuals were arguably even more important than the fact bites. I wanted to create dynamic, active imagery, cool shapes and vibrant colour, strong textures, dramatic typography, charts, arrows, labels, diagrams, icons, close-ups, real-life sizings and measurements, and pages that force kids to turn the page sideways and thereby physically interact with the book. To add meaning to the illustrations, I actually took a series of photos around the National Library of Australia and on the shores of Lake Burley Griffin, which laps at its doorstep. I snapped the leaves, grass, water, tiling, cement, footpaths, bark, sky, and used a digital eyedropper to harness the natural hues for use in FAUNA. I also used the photographs as texture in the book, along with my own watercolour blooms, as can be seen in this bellowing koala. Yes, koalas do make noise. It was important to feature conservation status in the book, of course, and each animal is labelled in this way. I included just some of the animals that are critically endangered, as well as recent extinction and our country's extraordinary megafauna, which died out 46,000 years ago. I even have space for Australia's dinosaurs. They may be few, but they be fierce. At the end of FAUNA, there is an animal family tree cladogram. The library employed a scientific editor to work on this with me, and the result literally took months to perfect. Such is the incredible complex nature of faunal life on Earth. But of course, actual imagery is what makes this chart so much more accessible and comprehensible for children, as is ever the way. End papers were made from textures and shapes cut from animals in the book. Children, who are immensely clever, of course, need no instruction on seeking out which animal these dots represent. I am sure they quickly take to hunting them through the book. Creating books on animals, most especially our incredible Australian animals, is no task. It's easy. It's more than easy. The beauty, the uniqueness, and the majesty of animals provide immense fodder for both fiction and non-fiction picture books for children. Animals slip readily into the myriad roles children love so much. Endemic, mischievous, silly, powerful, magical, real, funny, dry, adventurous, clever, unique, intriguing, precious. For children, combining books with animals is a powerful manifestation. For them, animals are as vital as breath is to lung, as giggling is to fun. Animals bring comfort to children. They bring companionship, joy, understanding, connection. And so do books. Enormous thanks to Judy and the National Library of Seoul for asking me to speak at this glorious event. I wish you many, many happy years inside the pages of a book. 감사합니다.